Hello, everybody. Chris Lee of Southeastern 16, joined by Graham Doty, Alfred Ezman, as we continue our baseball preview for the 2025 season. Rob Vaughn, Alabama's coach, joins us, who's had a very successful go at it in Tuscaloosa so far. Rob, thanks for joining us today.
Heck yeah, man. Excited to be here.
You walked into a weird situation. I won't unpack all that. Everybody knows it. But I feel like you've got to be very happy with the job you have done. How good do you feel about the footing you have Alabama baseball on right now as we head into 2025?
Yeah, you walk into a new place, and it's really the first time in my career I did that. My first head coaching job, I was an assistant at Maryland for 5 years leading up
Mm-hmm.
to it. So you kind of know the ins and outs, the players coming in, the players you have. Last year, I remember, a year and a half ago, we were putting our roster together for the 24 season. I mean, man, we hadn't watched. I mean, we're busy trying to coach our players at Maryland. We hadn't watched a lot of Alabama, so we didn't know really what we had, what we were walking into, anything like that. And so, really challenging trying to kind of put the roster together. But I'll give that previous staff credit. I know there were some things that happened there, but the cupboards weren't bare walking in here.
Yeah.
Justin Lebron being on the roster, Zane Adams coming in on the roster, both unproven, but both very elite players. Riley Quick being on the roster, Ben Hess being on the roster. There was some veterans in there that had done it in this league, and we made a really concerted effort last year to not be young. I think navigating this league is a really young team can be a real challenge. So we were able to kind of fill some gaps and fill some holes with some older players. And I think the byproduct of that, though, is it kind of turns over again this year, right? Like a lot of those guys move on to pro ball or they move on to graduation. So you're kind of back in that same spot, but you have a little bit better feel for the roster, a little bit better feel for the league. So I think as we go into this year, I think there's going to be some similarities in some ways, and I think there's going to be, some differences in some ways. I think we have a little bit more of a athletic lineup. I think we're going to still be able to hit for some power, but I think we're going to be able to create and do some different things there. I think on the mound, a lot more familiar faces there, and obviously getting Riley Quick back healthy is huge for us. So
Yeah.
with him coming back and Zane Adams and some veterans in that bullpen, I like where we're at this time of year. Shoot, I was talking to Michael early this morning. He's a good friend of mine, and we were talking this morning. It's like, man, we just got to get game one here. You don't really know what you got until the bullets start flying. But I think I'm a big believer in culture and creating culture and building culture and doing things the right way. And it's a little different nowadays, because you don't have a whole lot of guys that are staying put for 4 straight years. There's a lot of moving parts, so you're having to create that culture every year. But I think the leadership on this team's good, and it's going to be put to the test here quick because we got about 2.5 weeks and we'll get rolling. But excited to get this going and excited where we're at right now.
You spent over a decade at Maryland. Last year, you're first in the SEC. What'd you learn about life in the SEC?
Man, we had played SEC teams at Maryland. We always try to play one a year because obviously in that league you're trying to boost your RPI. So we had played those teams at times. We'd played LSU, we'd played Ole Miss, we'd played Florida in my time there. We'd played some high-level teams. The difference, and you can't explain it until you're in it, is there's one thing to play those teams and there's another thing to play those teams for 10 consecutive weekends. That's what makes this thing an animal, but it's awesome. I think as a competitor, whether it's a player or a coach or a recruit, like that's what you're looking for. Like you want to test yourself against the best of the best. And it didn't matter who we played. When you left the field on Sunday afternoon, you felt like you just went through a regional. I mean, it was emotional, it was draining, it was hard. There's not one team that you can just show up and say, we're going to win the series here. Like, man, you can play good baseball and lose the series. You can play good baseball and get swept, But I think that's what makes this league awesome. It is the best of the best in college baseball on display every weekend. And it really boils down to a play here or a play there. There might be some times in Maryland, we went through a time there, and I loved my time there, man. It's been 11 years there, and I loved every second of it. But we went through a time from April of 2021 until I left in 23. We did not lose a Big Ten conference series. Like we won, it's like 23 in a row. That's just not happening in this league. It's just simply not feasible in this league. As good as Tennessee was in 22, which might be the best team, and I know ironically, they didn't make it to Omaha there, but might be the best team college baseball's ever seen, maybe, went on a run and didn't do something like that. And so it's one of those things where I think you've got to be resilient. You've got to – it's really where your culture shows up, when you get punched in the mouth, when you have that tough weekend, when you play good and lose. Like, how do you bounce back from that? How do you respond is a big mark on whether you're going to continue playing baseball in June or whether you start recruiting in June, and none of us like starting that. So it's awesome. It's fun. It's hard. It'll make you pull your hair out at times, but it's the most fun thing I've got to do. And man, I can't wait to get it started again.
You had two guys you mentioned briefly who are now sophomores heading into this season, who I think are going to be figureheads on this team for 2025. That's Justin Lebron and Zane Adams. Adams was a guy, I think, people started to notice him as he went deeper into games in his freshman year. It was kind of like, wow, this guy down in Tuscaloosa is going deep and he's only a freshman. This is someone to keep your eye out on. And then Justin Lebron, I think, is just a super athletic, twitchy shortstop. Dive into both of those guys and, your thoughts on them heading into this season.
Yeah, I mean, we knew Zane was going to be a good player. Ironically enough, I got this job here. One of the first places I flew was to Porter, Texas, to go sit in Zane Adams' house. So I knock on the door and go in there. This lady answers the door, and her name's Amanda, Zane's mom. Amanda and I went to high school together, and I did not realize that was who that was until we walked in. So me sitting in her and her husband's living room, basically being like, "Hey, trust me with your son," was a full circle moment for sure.
Wow.
But man, Zane's biggest attribute is it's just a really slow heartbeat. The moment doesn't get big. He's the ultimate competitor. I mean, when he has all of his stuff, he's as tough as it gets. When he doesn't, man, he just competes. And I think that's a little bit of a throwback. And I think that's what allowed him at a young age to have success in this league, is not making the moment big, understanding, hey, this is what I got today. I got to go compete with what I've got, and not compounding mistakes and not doing that. And I think that's a byproduct of just his demeanor. And man, he believes in his soul that he deserves success because of how he works and how he goes about his business. And I think when you saw him as a freshman, I mean, we're playing number 1 Arkansas here, and it's 1-1 going into Sunday, and Zane's towing the rubber and threw just a gem of a game against them to beat the number 1 team in the country and win the series, and that kind of jump started him. And Zane competed hard last year, and he pitched, and it was strikes, and it was a decent little changeup and a decent little breaking ball. But he's just continued to get better. He turned down some money in the draft in high school to come to school here, and we realize he's a draft eligible sophomore. This might be our last ride with Zane. It more than likely will be, but man, the way he's gone about his business, everything's just ticked up. The changeup was good when the fastball was 88 to 90. Now that it's 93, 95, that changeup's playing even better. The curveball with the velo jump has gotten tighter and better. He's added a little bit of a cutter to the repertoire that's been a game changer. I mean, it was kind of on display at Florida State this fall when we played them in our fall game. It was, Jamie Arnold goes out and punches out the side in the first against us. Zane steps in, punches out the side in the bottom of the first against them. And it was like, it was just like that on both guys because it strikes, it's stuff. So his emergence, I think he's ready to take the step from like, man, he's a nice young freshman to he's one of the bona fide Friday guys in this league. I think he gives you a real chance to do that. And then you hit the nail on the head with LeBron. I mean, it's plus makeup. It's all of those things. Going into the year last year, we honestly thought if you looked at my lineups for the first 8 weeks of the year, Braun was hitting 8-9 for us. Even going into Tennessee opening weekend, I think he was hitting 8th of SEC play. And before you know it, you're just like, man, this kid just you kept waiting for that freshman slump. That freshman struggle, tired, gets his tail kicked, and it just never happened. And he ended up hitting in the 3-hole for us, and he's going to hit 2, 3 for us again this year. But I think the biggest thing you always want to see with guys like that is, he was by no means an unknown coming out of high school. I mean, he was a draft guy. He was all those, but it's one thing to be a really good player coming into college, and it's one thing to be a starting SEC shortstop as a freshman. Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
And not only did he do that, but he finishes first team all conference and gets all these honors, plays with Team USA this summer. And you wonder coming back in year two, does he start to think he's figured this thing out and start to think, man, I'm the man. I'm really good. Like, and you see that decline, and it was really the opposite with him. He's been an even better teammate. I've seen him grow in leadership, and when standing in the middle of the field, man, I feel pretty good about it. And so he's been dynamite, and he's going to be an anchor on both sides. He's going to be anchor of our infield and our defense. And I'm a big believer. Like I said, my best hitter usually hits two. That's kind of how I've constructed my lineups over the years. And we're going into this year and Brown in that spot, and I think he's ready for it. So need big years out of those guys, and they're prepared and they've worked, and I think they deserve it. So I'm excited to get going with them.
Rob, Riley Quick is obviously an elite talent. He went out in the Manhattan game last year, had Tommy John surgery. How do you pace him? What does it look like? Sometimes a guy comes back and he's okay. Sometimes he comes back and he can throw, but the command isn't the same. What do you think that looks like for him this year? What kind of timetable are you looking at to have him pitch and to maybe have him pitch to the length that he can?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that was obviously a kick in the gut last year. I mean, he goes out against Manhattan, is 97-99 his first outing, is electric, and then has TJ on Tuesday, so that was obviously just a rough go at it there. And just part of the game. I think when you throw as hard as some of these guys do now, that's a little bit of a byproduct of what can happen, because he is as diligent as it gets with his arm care, and JJ and the plan he puts together for those arms is I don't want to use the word cautious, but as smart as we can be with those guys. And sometimes that happens. But I think Riley's going to look up after his fifth year in the big leagues and say the best thing that ever happened to me was having TJ and having to kind of sit on the side for a year, because he was with me every day. He stood literally right next to me in the dugout every single day. And I think he was able to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, he was able to watch the game and watch it through a little bit of a different lens and see what the super successful guys do, see when the successful guys struggled, how they responded and what they did, good or bad. And I think it was as much as I wanted that guy on the mound last year, I think for his even just maturity and development in that aspect, I think it's one of the best things that could have happened for him. So he's attacked his rehab like you knew he would. I mean, he's an Alabama guy, man. Like, it's an Alabama family. We cannot give him recruits on Alabama football games at times, because if Alabama football does not play good, Riley goes into a dark place. And so we have to be careful with him, with recruits there. But just to do – and so – because what you wonder as a coach a little bit, there's no doubt Riley's a draft guy. I mean, it's going to be 97 to 100 this year. He is a draft pick this year. So you wonder a little bit, like, we've all coached the guys where it's like, man, we got to be cut. This is my draft year, and there's bigger things in front of me. The only thing on Riley Quick's mind since last February was getting back to pitch for Alabama baseball this year. So he's attacked his rehab. He's attacked his nutrition. He's in great shape. He looks awesome. And we kept having to pull the reins back on him because he felt good. We're like, dude, we don't need you cutting 96 out yet. Like, pull this thing back. And he threw one inning in our scrimmage last weekend. It was 90. I think his average fastball was 98.7 in that game. I mean, it was 97-99. He got 6 outs on 17 pitches and was efficient. The slider's tight. He's throwing the changeup well. He'll throw 2 innings this week in our scrimmage, so he'll throw 2 innings tomorrow. And we'll slowly build. I think opening weekend, if all stays according to schedule, you probably have him at about 40, 45 pitches. So, you're hoping to get maybe 3 innings out of him, maybe 2 innings out of him, just being smart there. But the goal is by the time we head to College Station and opening weekend of SEC play, I don't think he's going to be built up necessarily to 105 yet. That's kind of our line that we usually use with arms as a cut. Like, he's probably not there yet, but he is more in that 85, 95 pitch range where he can actually give you kind of a full start. So we're going to start him out of the gate. He will start. I want him in that routine. We might kind of starter A, starter B him just to kind of fill those games. But we're obviously going to be smart with him. But I've just been really proud of how he's handled some adversity, how he's bounced back, and he's as competitive as it gets, man. I can't wait to get him out there for 16, 17 starts this year.
Two new faces, two new additions on your roster this season. Brady Neal, a guy with SEC experience, and then Garrett from Sanford, all conference in the SoCon. What's the addition of those two been like for you and your program?
Just great people, man. I mean, when Brady got in the transfer portal, I literally was sitting in my office. His name popped up, and I got on our travel agency website and booked a flight up to the Cape and went and sat down with him because I'd seen the player. And coming out of high school, JJ, our pitching coach here, he recruited him really heavily out of high school, and it kind of came down to LSU and Alabama out of high school. And Brady referenced, man, part of the reason Alabama was towards the top of his list when he was going into the portal was when he called JJ to tell him he was going to LSU. And if you guys know JJ at all, this is who he is. He was extremely great, like just great with him, man. Handled it awesome. Was like, hey, I understand. I appreciate you. Best of luck to you. If anything ever changes, let us know. But go get him. And not all phone calls go that way when a young kid calls a coach to tell him that. So I think that stuck with Brady. And so I just wanted to get to know the kid. I didn't know him outside of the player I'd watched play when they played 3 games here in Tuscaloosa last year. And I loved him, man, like mature, understands what he's wanting, comes from an awesome family. And the thing I love about Brady is, he's going to be a guy behind the plate for us, no question. He can really do it. But he might be one of the best athletes on the field at any given time. Like, he might be our second or third best infielder if we needed to. He might be our second or third best outfielder if we needed him to. So, I think it gets you some opportunity to – you got to give him a day off behind the plate. It's not he's got to sit on the bench and watch. If he's swinging the bat like he can, you're plugging him in at second. You're plugging him in at left. You're plugging him in some of these spots. So just a jack of all trades guy for us there. But man, like really did a great job behind the plate. Coach Morrison works with our catchers here, and man, just looking at some of his framing metrics, which not to nerd out on you guys with it, but there's all these metrics with that as far as receiving goes. Like, this is by no means a knock on what he was before, but just to see how much better that's gone from his first 2 years in college to his first fall here, it's been astronomical, which is huge. So can really do it back there. Is one of the best catch throw guys I've seen back behind the plate. So he's a weapon for us there. And then you said Garrett, Garrett Staton. I got on the phone with him when we were at the Tallahassee Regional last year, and he got in the portal. We had played Sanford twice last year. Obviously put up gaudy numbers last year, and I got on the phone with him, and he starts talking about culture and what he wants and what he's looking for, and I just felt like it was the perfect fit. So Garrett's been great for us. He's a great human being, number one. But I think he's going to see time at some different spots too. Like, he played a lot of third base at Sanford last year. He started his career as a second baseman at Sanford, so I think you could see him in both spots this year, just depending on kind of how we decide to move some other guys around. But it's power out of him, but it's hit tool, and he's a way better athlete than anybody gives him credit for. He plays fast, and that doesn't always see that in BP. You see 319 with 20 pumps, and you just think big physical slammer. But man, it's a good athlete too. He can run the bases, he can steal bases, he can do a little bit of all that. So 2 huge additions that for Alabama baseball to be good, those guys are going to have to be good, and so we're excited for them.
One more portal addition I want to dive into is Jason Torres out of Miami. He's a guy who he got more at bats as time went on at Miami, and his batting average stayed way up there. I think it said 336 last season for them. Talk about him and stuff you've seen out of him, and where do you think he'll slot in?
Man, I love JT, and he was coming back from injury, so he got hurt last spring. So he missed probably the first 3 or 4 weeks of the fall, was still finishing his rehab. When he was able to go, I mean, he just transparently, he had a terrible fall. I mean, it was bad. He didn't hit. He didn't do anything. It was not a good fall. But I kept telling him, I was like, JT, man, we know what you can do. We know who you are. Like, I felt like, and that's a normal thing, like you get the transfer that comes in, and he feels like he's got to prove it to the new coaches, and he's got to prove it to the new teammates. And it's like, dude, just breathe. You're going to be fine. And you've seen it. Like, his fall wasn't very good, but he's come back this spring, and it's been real. Like, it's back to what he was. And I just told him, I said, man, you didn't play baseball for 7 months. And then your first time back hitting, is in a live game, like, because he missed basically all of our individuals leading up to it. So you've seen him make the adjustment, be able to adjust. The hit tool is real. I mean, he hits balls hard, like hard. The at-bats are professional. We'll see what it is. I think it's going to be, as much as he impacts the baseball, I still think it's probably average over power. Like, the reason I think you see him doing that, some of the best bolts that JT hits is balls that are blitzed into right center. It's just a really good approach. It's a clean swing. There's strength in it. As we sit and play right now, I have him hitting in the 4-hole for us, and we say, like, that's where I need him to be able to hit. Now, performance can move him up, move him down, could change that. But if I can get JT to be the JT he's been these first, months since we've been back from Christmas break, that dude will settle into the 4-hole good. And, I think same thing, there's some versatility in there. They had Cuvée at Miami, who's a superstar. So JT moved over to first. He can really do it at first. It's feel. He's got hands. He's got all of those intangibles there. But he can really play third base. Like, I think he's going to see time at both. I think he's going to – it's a really good clock. It reminds me a lot of Gage Miller, who we had at third last year defensively, where maybe the range isn't absurd, but there's feel. His clock's really good. So I think he spends time at both corners and is going to be a guy to anchor the middle of that lineup.
Rob, how's your outfield look? I know you got Kade Snell coming back. You picked up a couple of JUCO transfers in Bryce Fowler, and I guess it's Richie Bonomolo Jr. Correct me if I pronounced that wrong.
Right.
But just give us an idea of what your outfield looks like.
Yeah, last year we were fortunate to have a guy with SEC experience anchor center field for us in TJ McCants. Like, awesome human, plays for some of my best friends in the world before he came here, and Mike Clement and Carl Lafferty. Like, love those two dudes. And TJ had a great last year and got himself drafted, got a chance to play. I did think, like, when you evaluated our team last year, we just weren't as athletic out there as I wanted to be. TJ made every play he needed to make. Patrutz was steady, slight and right, same thing, very steady. But we needed to upgrade. Like, just making the plays isn't strictly the standard of an elite outfield. Like, an elite outfield takes runs off the board, right? And so we wanted to be a little bit more athletic out there. And I think we did that. I think Pap and Mo went and found two perfect dudes in Fowler and Bonomolo. I mean, Fowler, we recruited hard in the fall and put up just gaudy numbers at Wabash, over 400, 60-something stolen bases, 18 homers. So he adds a little bit of that. It's a true center fielder, like a real true center fielder. He can really go get it. He's been awesome for us. And then Bryce Fowler, was committed to go to Campbell, came out of Pearl River Community College down here in Mississippi, was going to Campbell, and then Justin Hare made the move up to Ohio State, and Bryce, a Mississippi boy, he said Columbus, Ohio is too dang cold for him to go up there. But he, when that change happened, we had all seen him. I had seen him, Mo had seen him, JJ had seen him, because we were recruiting a couple of the arms at Pearl River, and so we had all been in to see those arms throw. And I was at one of their regional final games in Pearl River, and I don't know a lot about the team. I know the two arms I'm going to watch, and Bryce steps up and hits an absolute pump to dead center to start the game, and he oozes confidence and oozes like toughness and all of those things that you really like. And I remember pulling up being like, who is this guy? And so I was committed to Campbell, and I was like, oh, well, all right, good for Justin. That guy's going to be good. So when all that went down, we got a call from one of their assistant coaches, after he got out of his NIL and all that stuff, and was basically like, hey, Bryce is open. I don't know if you guys have ever seen him. We hit him on campus the next day, and he committed that night. So he's a true center fielder too. And I think that's where we're lucky is I think you could see either one of those guys in center or right, depending on how we shake that up. But you have those two guys that are plus athletes, plus runner, plus defenders, plus throwers in center and right in whatever order. And then you have Kade Snell, who's our captain, out and left. And shoot, Kade hitting the 4-hole for us last year. Kind of Patrutz-ish out there, just very steady. Dude, he ain't afraid of anything. I feel like that guy will go full Superman on stuff. So he's been a breath of fresh air out there. He's been great. So I really think that's going to be one of our strengths this year, and I don't want to call it a weakness last year, but it definitely wasn't a strength of ours. I think one of our strengths is going to be our outfield defense.
You touched on Zane earlier. Just how do you feel about your weekend rotation and your bullpen?
One thing, starting with the rotation, I mean, starting with Zane and Riley is a pretty good place to start, and those 2 guys I think will anchor Friday, Saturday in whatever order. And then Sunday, I think it's honestly a competition for Sunday right now. We've got several options. We've got Tyler Fay, who's, heavy sinker, threw a lot out of the pin for us last year. I think profiles a little bit more as a starter, started up in the Cape all summer, had a great summer up there. Bo Bryant's kind of a low slot lefty with plus stuff. I mean, it's every bit of 95 from a low slot with a good slider, good changeup. He's going to be in the mix for that. JT Blackwood, another junior college transfer that's just got, it's a plus secondary pitch. He'll be 92, 93 with some command. He can sink it. He can carry it, but the cutter is real. Austin Moore is kind of a dark horse for us in that, one of our better relievers towards the end of the year last year, I think, profiles to potentially be in that kind of spot. So I think there's some competition for that last role, which is what you really want. You want those guys competing and having to work through that and figure some things out. So we're going to see early on in the season kind of who can handle it and who grabs a hold of that role. But I think we have some options there. And as far as the bullpen goes, we really like the guy we're going to have on the back end. Carson Osmer, transfer from Penn, has done it, mature as it gets. Was awesome at times last year, throughout his career for Penn. But, I think him being able to – he was their dude. So there was times he would go out and throw 4 innings to finish the game, 5 innings to finish the game. We're hoping as he goes in and we can kind of cement him to that back end role that he stays fresher a little bit longer and the stuff continues to be good. But it's a low slot righty, 92, 93. He'll come over the top with a mid-90s heater. It's a really good slider. So can do some different things there, but he's tough. He's tough and he's mature, and he ain't going to be afraid of the moment, which is what we love there. But I think what we really wanted out of the bullpen was some different looks. I felt like last year, every guy we ran out there was 88, 91 with a slider. And then we'd go to the next guy. It was 88, 91 with a slider. Next guy, 88, 91. And so it was all the same. And as an offensive guy, what I hate facing is different looks. I hate the low slot lefty, and then you go to the low slot righty, then you got the over the top righty, then you got the changeup. Like those are the things that really mess up an offense. And I think this team has a little bit different looks and can give you some of that out of the bullpen. So, and that's where our most experience lies. Like the most experience on this team lies on the pitching side of the baseball. So we're going to need them to carry us and be good as our offense kind of learns their identity, plays together a little bit, and starts to meld together as the season goes.
Rob, we covered a lot of ground. I may have missed it. Where do you line up on the right side of your infield?
So just very honestly, like a lot of this is going to be moving parts. I think the one thing I know is Justin Lebron, barring health and barring all that, is going to stand at shortstop every single day. And then I think on both sides, like I said, Jason Torres, I think can play over at first and be very, very good. I think we could slide him to third and he could be really good. We've got Will Hodo, who's a senior veteran, could be a play first base for us, and it's what he did every game for us last year, and he's just continued to improve defensively. Again, middle of the order type bat for us, but could also DH or play a corner outfield spot. Could slide out to left if we need him to. Brennan Norton, a transfer from Jack State. It's real power. It's real power. So just he played a lot of third at Jack State. We've had him more over at second, so him navigating through that will be good. And so I think that's a potential there. You could see Garrett Staton play over at second or over at third. And I think we have a young pup in John Young Jr. He's a New Jersey kid. We recruited John back in Maryland for years. And finally get to coach him down here now. And it's tough. And I don't know where I don't know if John's going to fit in there opening day, but John Young Jr. is going to factor into our program winning baseball games this spring and is going to be kind of the shortstop of the future as LeBron moves on, after the draft next season. So good group of dudes there. I think the strength of this team are some interchangeable parts, and I think we have a lot of that in the infield.
Coach, I think I've kind of been the schedule guy between the three of us in our interviews we've done with coaches. I've just picked out key points of everyone's SEC schedule. For me, for you guys, it's the month of May. That really kind of stands out to me, and I'm sure you've seen it by now. You begin at Vanderbilt in Nashville. You even have a tough midweek on the road at Troy. Troy, always puts some good, gritty teams together, as all those Sun Belt teams kind of do. You then come back to Tuscaloosa. You host Georgia, who's going to have a great team, and then you end the year on the road at Florida. That month of May is a behemoth of a set of games that you have. Obviously this is so far away, and you guys definitely not at the front of your minds right now. But when you get to that point, what are you going to what's the mentality going to be with how you tell your team to go through that tough schedule?
I mean, we talk about a neutral mindset all the time on here. It's like you just got to reset yourself back to zero, man. Like whether you go sweep somebody or whether you get punched in the mouth. Like, I think you pick your poison in this. You look at the month of May, or you look at starting at A&M with Tennessee rolling in week 2. I mean, That's the SEC, and again, that's what makes it what it is. And I never, when I was not in this league and I heard it just means more, it used to drive me insane. I was like, no, it doesn't. That's stupid. It's the same game. It doesn't matter. Like, how should a team that only won 13 or 14 games in their league be in the postseason? And then you navigate this thing and you're like, shoot, you win 14 games. You just had a big time year. Like that's the kind of league this is. And so it is, I've said this is one of the biggest takeaways I had from last year is I think you could almost start every game in SEC play is a 1-run game in the 5th because they all somehow get there. I mean, you have a handful of blowouts. You have a handful where you get blown out, but 20 of those 30 games are going to be one play here, one pitch here, 1 2-out hit here, 1 error here. And it's usually going to happen somewhere in the 4th through the 6th. And so honestly, like that's going to be the biggest thing is can we pitch and play defense? Cause that's the one thing that'll carry you. Cause the reality is as good as these arms are in this league, I was going through the preseason all SEC ballot today and I was I had to pick 8 starting pitchers. And I'm like, there's 35 starting pitchers on here that could be on here, like that are good enough to be on here. So to me, that's going to be the big thing. When you go on the road to Vanderbilt, when you go on the road to Florida, pitching and defense travels. It's hard sometimes to hit, in those things. When you're on the road and you're in the environment, like that'll be 2 places I haven't been before. So, but the one thing that should be able to travel is pounding the strike zone with stuff and playing clean defense. And if we do those things and the offense gets rolling right, we're going to be just fine. So, but like anything, that's, I think the beauty of this league is who knows, shoot, us in Florida may be battling to win the league. Us in Florida may be battling for the last spot in the postseason. Like who knows where you're going to be at in that spot right there. So I think you have to be super committed to, hey, we got to come out and it's the most coach speak thing ever. And I get that, but regardless of result, like the teams I've coached over the last few years, the one thing we've done a good job of is regardless of what happened night before, good or bad, we've showed up with the right mentality and the right attitude. And that's what you have to do in this league. And so that will be no difference whether that's starting down in College Station or whether that's finishing the year in Gainesville.
Rob, you're not wrong about all that. I've started to try to put together a preseason all-SEC team, and I'm going to take 3, I think. I'm going to do 3 starting pitchers and a reliever on the pitching side, and the hitting will be pretty straight up with the – and I'm already anticipating all the ways I'm going to get yelled at and where it's going to come from. So it's
no doubt.
I know what you mean. I've looked at it too, but I want to give you the final word here. We've covered a lot of ground, but are there any big storylines with your team or your program that we might have missed that deserve a discussion here?
Not really. I mean, we pride ourselves on there. You look at what is the separator in this league because every team is awesome. Every team has the best players in the country. And so you look at it all the time, man, like talent isn't going to determine who wins this league. Talent is not going to determine this. Yes, it's going to play a role. There's no question. We'd be ignorant if we didn't think it's helpful to have Justin Lebron as our shortstop. There's no doubt. Like talent matters, but the separator is who's tougher. Like, and I know that sounds crazy, but like the way we define toughness all the time is like how you respond in the midst of adversity. Like, how do you respond to failure? How do you respond to success? How do you respond to crowds? How do you respond to any of this? That's what we've kind of built this team around, is hard-nosed, tough kids. And calling it what it is, like, we have a lot of guys on this team that other people have said aren't good enough, whether it's other teams in our league, whether it's kids that came out of JUCO. Those are the kind of kids I love coaching. I love coaching kids that at some point in their life have been said, like, you ain't good enough to play here. You're not good enough to play there. Because that was me. I mean, my dad played baseball at Texas A&M, and my lifelong dream, I had a really good scholarship to go play at Kansas State. If Texas A&M would have told him, hey, Rob, you got to pay us $10,000 a year to come here, I'd be like, heck yeah, let's go. Yeah. I'll pay you to let me play there. But at the time, the coaching staff was there, and they were incredible. And I was small. I was an undersized catcher. They were like, hey, you're not good enough to play here. And so I think I've always been drawn to those kids. I think I coach those kids well because I am one of those guys. And so we have a team full of that. We have guys that at some point of their career, it's you're not big enough, you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough, you're not talented enough, you're not this, you're not that. And because of that, there's an edge. And when we go out and play with an edge, man, we got a chance to be really good. But to me, that's got to be our separator this year, is we have to be the toughest team on the field. Like, we have a sign that hangs up and it says, just be tougher than them. Like, at the end of the day, when you walk out of that bullpen, it doesn't matter what you've got to be tougher than the dude 60 foot 6 inches away from you. When you step in the batter's box, you got to be tougher than that dude standing out there. Doesn't mean you're going to get him every time, but we have to be the ultimate competitors if that's what we want to be. And we got to believe, hey, whatever we got today is good enough, and we're going to go compete and get it done. So that's what we've kind of built this around. That's a little bit of a snapshot of our culture and what that looks like. Now it's a matter of going to live it. Like I said, me and Early were talking earlier this morning, and none of us, as talented as that team is, and it's as talented as any team, if not the most talented team in college baseball, like, we won't know what we have until we step on that field for the first time. You might have ideas, but you don't quite know yet. And I want to see our team live that ethos that they talk about and that we've preached. And if we can live that, we give ourselves a fighting shot.
Hey, Rob, congratulations on your success last year in what wasn't an easy situation. Good luck this year. Thank you so much for your time. We have really enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome, guys. I appreciate you guys and look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, he's Rob Vaughn, head coach of Alabama baseball. I'm Chris Lee, joined by Graham Doty and Alfred Ezman of Southeastern 16. Thanks for watching. Got plenty more of these to come, so hit the subscribe button and enable your notifications so you see them. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon with more SEC baseball content at Southeastern 16.